Overthinking is a quiet struggle that many people carry inside their minds every single day. On the outside, they may appear calm, thoughtful, and even intelligent. But inside, their thoughts are racing endlessly, analyzing every possibility, every mistake, and every future scenario that could go wrong. Overthinking turns the mind into a crowded room, where every thought talks at once. Small decisions become heavy burdens, and simple conversations replay in the mind like an endless movie. People who overthink are not weak or broken. In fact, many of them are deeply caring, emotionally aware, and highly perceptive individuals. Their minds simply refuse to rest. They try to control uncertainty by thinking more and more, believing that if they analyze everything long enough, they can prevent pain, embarrassment, or failure. But the opposite often happens. Overthinking creates anxiety, emotional exhaustion, and self-doubt. Understanding why people overthink and learning how to overcome it is essential for anyone who wants a calmer mind and a healthier emotional life. This struggle is common, but it is also something that can be managed with awareness, patience, and consistent mental habits. People who overthink often have minds that are extremely active and analytical. Their brains constantly search for meaning, patterns, and hidden messages in everyday situations. When someone says a simple sentence, the overthinker may analyze the tone, the choice of words, and even the pauses between them. Instead of hearing a conversation once and moving forward, they replay it repeatedly, wondering if they said something wrong or if the other person secretly meant something negative. This mental habit develops because the brain becomes trained to scan for problems. It treats every situation like a puzzle that must be solved. While this ability can be useful in problem solving or creative thinking, it becomes harmful when it is applied to every aspect of life. The brain begins to treat normal experiences as potential threats. A delayed text message, a quiet moment in a conversation, or a minor mistake can trigger hours of internal analysis. Over time, this constant thinking drains mental energy and prevents people from enjoying the present moment. Instead of living life, they become trapped in a cycle of questioning, imagining, and worrying about possibilities that may never even happen. One major reason people overthink is fear. Fear of making mistakes, fear of being judged, fear of losing relationships, and fear of failure all feed the cycle of excessive thinking. When someone is afraid of negative outcomes, their mind tries to predict and prevent every possible problem. The brain believes that by thinking harder and longer, it can find the perfect answer that avoids pain. Unfortunately, life rarely works that way. Many situations have no perfect solution, and many outcomes cannot be predicted. However, the overthinking mind struggles to accept uncertainty. Instead of letting situations unfold naturally, it keeps searching for control through thought. This creates mental tension because the mind is trying to solve problems that do not yet exist. For example, someone might imagine dozens of ways a future conversation could go wrong, even though the conversation has not happened yet. This constant anticipation of problems makes the brain stay in a state of stress. Over time, fear trains the mind to assume that thinking more equals safety, even though it often leads to emotional exhaustion and anxiety. Another powerful cause of overthinking is past experiences. People who have experienced criticism, rejection, embarrassment, or emotional pain in the past often develop a habit of mentally reviewing their actions. Their minds learn to analyze every detail in order to avoid repeating painful experiences. For example, someone who was once criticized harshly for a mistake may start reviewing every decision carefully, afraid that another mistake will bring the same judgment. This protective behavior is the brain's attempt to prevent future pain. Unfortunately, it often becomes excessive. Instead of learning from the past and moving forward, the mind becomes trapped in constant evaluation. Every action feels like a test that must be passed perfectly, Even minor decisions can feel overwhelming, because the brain treats them as potential threats to personal safety or social acceptance. Over time, this pattern builds a habit where the brain automatically replays past moments and imagines future ones. The individual may know logically that they are thinking too much, but the habit has become so deeply wired that stopping the cycle feels incredibly difficult. Perfectionism is also strongly connected to overthinking. People who believe that everything must be done perfectly often struggle to make decisions because they fear choosing the wrong option. Instead of trusting their instincts, they analyze every possible outcome. They compare choices, imagine consequences, and search endlessly for the perfect solution. The problem is that perfection rarely exists in real life. Most decisions involve uncertainty and compromise. When perfectionists cannot find the flawless answer they want, their minds continue thinking in circles. This can lead to decision paralysis, where a person delays action simply because they are trying to think through every possibility. Even after making a decision, the mind may continue questioning it. They may wonder if another option would have been better, or if they overlooked something important. This constant self-evaluation creates emotional pressure and makes even simple tasks feel stressful. Over time, perfectionism trains the brain to believe that mistakes are unacceptable, which increases the fear of acting without complete certainty. Overthinking also thrives in people who are deeply empathetic and emotionally aware. These individuals are very sensitive to the feelings and reactions of others. Because they care deeply about relationships, they spend a lot of time thinking about how their actions affect people around them. While empathy is a beautiful and valuable trait, it can sometimes lead to excessive mental analysis. An empathetic person might replay conversations to ensure they did not hurt someone's feelings. They may worry that a small comment was misunderstood, or that their behavior seemed insensitive. Their mind tries to evaluate every emotional detail in order to maintain harmony in relationships. However, this constant evaluation can create unnecessary worry. Human communication is naturally imperfect, and misunderstandings happen even in healthy relationships. When empathy turns into overthinking, the person begins carrying emotional responsibility for every reaction around them. They may feel pressure to manage other people's emotions constantly, which can be exhausting and unrealistic. Healthy relationships require communication and trust, not endless mental analysis of every interaction. Another factor that contributes to overthinking is the modern environment of constant information and comparison. People today are exposed to countless opinions, advice, and expectations through social media and digital communication. Every day, individuals see examples of success, happiness, beauty, and achievement displayed by others. This constant exposure can create a feeling that every decision must be carefully optimized to achieve the best possible life. Instead of simply choosing what feels right, people begin analyzing how their choices compare with others. They may question whether they are making the smartest career move, the best financial decision, or the most socially acceptable choice. This comparison mindset increases mental pressure and encourages deeper analysis of everyday decisions. The brain begins to treat life like a strategic game where every move must be carefully calculated. While thinking about decisions is healthy, the endless availability of information makes it easy for the mind to keep searching for more answers, instead of trusting the ones it already has. Overthinking often appears in two main forms: rumination about the past and worry about the future. Rumination involves repeatedly thinking about past events, mistakes, or conversations. The mind replays moments again and again, imagining how things could have been done differently. People may blame themselves, criticize their actions, or feel embarrassed about situations that are long finished. Worry about the future, on the other hand, involves imagining possible problems that might occur. The mind creates detailed scenarios about things going wrong and tries to plan solutions for each one. Both forms of overthinking keep the mind trapped in time periods that are not the present moment. The person is either mentally living in yesterday or tomorrow. This prevents them from fully experiencing what is happening right now. The present moment becomes overshadowed by mental noise from the past and future. As this pattern continues, the brain becomes accustomed to constant mental activity, making silence and calm feel unfamiliar or even uncomfortable. One of the most difficult aspects of overthinking is that it feels productive, even when it is not. When people analyze situations repeatedly, they often believe they are solving problems or preparing for challenges. The mind convinces them that thinking longer will eventually produce clarity. In some situations, careful thought is useful. However, overthinking crosses the line where thinking stops producing solutions and starts producing stress. Instead of reaching conclusions, the mind cycles through the same questions repeatedly. It becomes like a wheel spinning in place. The person may feel mentally busy for hours, but end up exactly where they started. This creates frustration and emotional fatigue. Because the brain is working constantly, the individual may also struggle with sleep or relaxation. Their thoughts continue even when they want to rest. Understanding that overthinking is not the same as productive thinking is an important step toward change. Real problem solving eventually leads to decisions and action, while overthinking keeps the mind trapped in endless analysis. Over time, chronic overthinking can have serious emotional and physical effects. The constant mental activity keeps the body in a state of stress. Stress hormones remain active, which can lead to fatigue, headaches, muscle tension, and difficulty sleeping. Emotionally, overthinking often increases anxiety and self-doubt. People may begin to question their abilities, their choices, and even their relationships. Because the mind is constantly searching for problems, it becomes easier to notice negative possibilities than positive ones. This can create a pessimistic outlook, where the brain expects difficulties even in neutral situations. Overthinking can also reduce confidence. When every decision is analyzed intensely, it becomes harder to trust personal instincts. People may start asking others for reassurance frequently, because they doubt their own judgment. In extreme cases, overthinking can contribute to anxiety disorders or depression. The mind becomes so focused on potential problems that it forgets to appreciate positive experiences. Joy and relaxation become rare because the brain is always busy scanning for the next issue to analyze. The first step in overcoming overthinking is awareness. Many people spend years trapped in this mental pattern without recognizing it clearly. They simply believe that thinking constantly is part of their personality. However, noticing when thoughts become repetitive or unproductive allows individuals to interrupt the cycle. Awareness involves observing the mind without immediately believing every thought it produces. When a person notices that they are replaying the same situation again and again, they can pause and acknowledge that the mind is stuck in a loop. This recognition alone can reduce the intensity of the mental spiral. It reminds the individual that thoughts are events happening in the mind, not always accurate reflections of reality. Developing awareness often requires practicing moments of mental observation, where a person simply watches their thoughts without reacting to them. Over time, this skill helps create distance between the thinker and the thoughts themselves, making it easier to step out of the cycle of endless analysis. Another powerful method for reducing overthinking is learning to accept uncertainty. Much of excessive thinking comes from the desire to control outcomes and avoid mistakes. However, life naturally includes unpredictable events and imperfect decisions. Accepting this truth allows the mind to relax its constant search for absolute certainty. Instead of trying to calculate every possible future scenario, individuals can focus on making reasonable choices with the information they currently have. Accepting uncertainty does not mean becoming careless or irresponsible. It simply means recognizing that no amount of thinking can guarantee perfect outcomes. When people accept that mistakes and surprises are part of life, the pressure to analyze every detail decreases. This shift in mindset creates mental space for action and experience. Instead of waiting for complete certainty, individuals learn to move forward with confidence in their ability to handle whatever happens next. Practicing mindfulness is another effective way to calm an overthinking mind. Mindfulness involves focusing attention on the present moment without judgment. This can be done through simple activities such as observing breathing, noticing physical sensations, or paying full attention to a task. When the mind begins drifting into past regrets or future worries, mindfulness gently brings attention back to the present. This practice trains the brain to spend less time in mental loops and more time experiencing reality directly. Over time, mindfulness strengthens the ability to notice thoughts without becoming trapped by them. The mind becomes quieter and more focused. Even a few minutes of mindful breathing each day can reduce the intensity of mental noise. As people develop this habit, they discover that peace does not come from solving every thought, but from learning when to let thoughts pass without following them. Taking action is also an important antidote to overthinking. When people remain in their heads for too long, thoughts become larger and more complicated than the actual situation. Action brings clarity, because it moves the person from imagination into reality. Even small steps can break the cycle of endless thinking. For example, instead of analyzing how a conversation might go, someone can simply start the conversation. Instead of worrying about whether a decision is perfect, they can choose a reasonable option and move forward. Action provides real feedback from the world, which is often less dramatic than the scenarios created in the mind. As people experience positive outcomes from taking action, their confidence grows. They begin to trust that they can handle challenges as they arise, rather than needing to predict everything in advance. Setting limits on thinking time can also be helpful. Instead of allowing the mind to analyze a problem endlessly, individuals can allocate a specific period for reflection and decision-making. For example, someone might decide to think about a situation for 15 minutes, write down possible solutions, and then choose one option. After that time, they commit to letting the issue rest. This technique trains the brain to focus its thinking more efficiently. It also prevents mental energy from being consumed by problems that cannot be solved immediately. By setting boundaries for analysis, people regain control over their attention and reduce the habit of constant rumination. Developing self-compassion is another essential step in overcoming overthinking. Many overthinkers are extremely hard on themselves. They criticize their actions, question their worth, and replay mistakes with harsh judgment. This internal criticism fuels the cycle of rumination. Learning to treat oneself with kindness can interrupt this pattern. Self-compassion means acknowledging that everyone makes mistakes, experiences uncertainty, and learns through trial and error. Instead of attacking themselves mentally, individuals can speak to themselves the way they would comfort a friend. This shift reduces emotional pressure and makes it easier to move forward after setbacks. When the mind feels safe from harsh judgment, it becomes less likely to obsess over every small imperfection. Building trust in one's own decisions is also crucial. Overthinking often reflects a lack of confidence in personal judgment. People may believe that they must analyze every possibility because they cannot trust their instincts. However, confidence grows through experience. Each time someone makes a decision and sees that they can handle the results, their trust in themselves increases. Over time, the brain learns that it does not need to calculate every outcome before acting. Instead, it can rely on accumulated experience and adaptability. This growing self-trust gradually reduces the urge to think endlessly before every action. Healthy lifestyle habits can also influence how much a person overthinks. Lack of sleep, excessive stress, and constant digital stimulation can make the mind more restless and reactive. Regular physical activity, sufficient sleep, and time away from screens allow the brain to recover from mental overload. Exercise in particular helps release stress hormones and improve mood, which can reduce the intensity of anxious thoughts. Spending time in nature or engaging in creative activities also gives the mind a break from analytical thinking. These lifestyle choices support mental balance and make it easier to maintain a calm and focused mind. Ultimately, overcoming overthinking is not about eliminating thought entirely. Thinking is a valuable human ability that allows people to learn, plan, and solve problems. The goal is to create a healthier relationship with thoughts. Instead of letting thoughts control every emotion and decision, individuals learn to observe them, evaluate them briefly, and then move forward. This balance allows the mind to remain active without becoming overwhelming. People who once struggled with constant analysis can gradually experience more moments of peace, presence, and clarity. The mind becomes a helpful tool rather than a constant source of stress. In the end, people who overthink are often individuals with deep minds and sensitive hearts. Their awareness, empathy, and intelligence are strengths, not weaknesses. The challenge is learning how to guide these qualities without becoming trapped by them. By practicing awareness, accepting uncertainty, taking action, and treating themselves with kindness, overthinkers can gradually quiet the mental noise that once dominated their lives. The journey requires patience and consistent effort, but the reward is a calmer mind and a richer experience of the present moment. Life becomes less about analyzing every possibility and more about living each moment with courage, acceptance, and trust.